All right. Here's I want to light a candle. Louis Nishmas, Rabbeinu Moshe Chaim Ben Yaakov Chai, Luzado. Schusay again a little while. Call Yisrael. I made a shackle. Actually, I didn't make a shackle. I'm not going to say it out loud in case someone's not listening to this in live stream. Right now it's live stream, but if someone will catch this later, I'm not allowed to answer Amen. It's not a real bracha. You can answer Amen in the live stream because even though you're not hearing my real bracha, but it's not worse than a flag that indicates I made a bracha. You're allowed to answer Amen, like in the big shul in Alexandria. I'm going to make my bracha quietly because just in case someone's catching this not live, so it shouldn't be an Amen Yesoma. L'chaim, l'chaim. Nishmas Rabbeinu Moshe Chaim. Yaakov Chaim L'zato. Suzu again later about Kol Yisrael. So we have a lot to speak about tonight, but everyone who's followed me over the years knows I speak about the Ramchal just about every year. You know, there's it's one of my heroes. You know, one of like the people that built me. Is Svarim, I mean, obviously, Hashem Mesilas Yesharim, Das Tvunas, Klach B'Schei Chachma, Adir B'Morim, Kiddush Hashem Tzavakas. It really is the, it's my bedrock, particularly in Hashkafa and in Kabbalah, and of course my Rabbeim always taught me in a type of kav of hesber that very much fits with the Ramchal's way of being masbir the Yesodis, like Ramosh Shapiro. So, Ramosh Shapiro wasn't limited to Ramchal, but it was definitely his bedrock also. And and he brought from others from as a Tosefes, as an addition on top of Ramchal. As we're going to explain, Ramchal's bedrock, and we're going to explain that very well. And Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg also, although Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg was much more Rambamist, and we will explain the interesting crossover. They say, "Mi Moshe vad Moshe lo kam ke Moshe." That's a famous statement that Ki'ilu was said about the Rambam, supposedly even in his own generation, that from Moshe, referring to Moshe Rabbeinu, ad Moshe, as in Moshe ben Maimon, lo kam ke Moshe. But I say, for reasons that I'll explain very well, Mi Moshe, as in Moshe ben Maimon, ad Moshe Chaim ben Yaakov Chai Luzado, lo kam ke Moshe. And because these two were like kindred spirits, like very, very similar derech halimud, and approach to Torah and the way they process the Torah. And I'm going to explain that more. And now it sounds like I'm going to talk about something totally unrelated, but please bear with me because there's a lot that I want to get done tonight. I have to want to speak about my personal situation, give Shevach V'Odah, and I also want to speak about what's going on in the world. And believe it or not, they are all intricately linked with the legacy of the Ramchal, which is the site of our Tikun, as we will explain. Let me first start on a personal note. B'Shech V'Odah Hashem Yisbarach. For those who know me and have been following me, wondering where I've been, because I've been offline and out of public view for almost 2 months now. And I don't want to get into all the nitty-gritty details. And still there's a little bit of, still I need some more siyata shmaya to heal properly, but I've had a certain medical emergency of, serious, something very, very serious that happened right after Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and spent nearly half of Nisan in the hospital. And with a very important life-saving surgery, and brain-saving surgery, without getting into all the details. And then I was on bed rest ever since, mostly. And then Baruch Hashem, Chasdei Hashem. Aside from that, having been mamash a big Yeshua, a big Hatzalah, right? But also I just had very recently, just a few days ago, a treatment to deal with the root problem. Which was mamash using the most cutting edge technology. I have to give Shevach V'Odah Hashem Yisbarach just for having been born in this era, living in this time, because even just 20 years ago they didn't have this type of technology that really saved me. And of course, like everything, just like Rebbe was Paido Matsu and brought these things to me, he should also, he who is the real Rofe Chole Amo, he is the real Rofe, should finish his job, beyond what he did thus far with his shluchim, through his shluchim, and give me refuah shlema, gemura, and I will talk about more of this at the end of tonight's address. So now, aside from, this is my first public appearance, even though it's not in public mamish, it's all online, since my emergency that Chasdei Hashem is on the mend. And it in itself is a Torah of the Ramchal, that the Ramchal writes, in more than one place, but particularly the Das Tvunas, that, as much as there's Yeridas Hadoros, right, but that's on the chitzonius of the Bria. Of course, in the premius of the Bria, everything is just moving towards Tikun, even if on the external level we're almost working against it, as I'm going to explain. And including that is Boirei Refuas, even though Ramchal doesn't give an example, but you could see what he means, that how everything is getting better, and it's really what we talk about dying. Boirei Refuas. Rebbe was creating new types of medications and ways to treat illness, and I think about this every day during davening, ever since what I've been through recently, because what helped me was the cutting edge of technology, including wild stuff like artificially grown flesh in a laboratory, that type of stuff, right? And also injecting mini robots through the bloodstream to, deal with the brain without having to drill in the head. Amazing stuff that there wasn't even 20 years ago. They didn't have these types of technologies. And Borei Refuah says, the Goyen says Borei doesn't necessarily mean Yesh Me'ayin. It doesn't have to mean that. The Goyen writes. The Goyen says Borei could mean any type of new mahut, any type of new concept, even if it's Yesh Me'yesh, because wherever machines they build, they make it out of materials that have been here, Sheshes made gracious, but it could be a whole new concept. It's not just not an improvement. It's like a whole new idea. So a new mahut, even if it's constructed out of the same matter that there always was, since Sheshes made gracious, but it's a new mahut, it's a whole new concept. Bria applies. You don't have to dafka say Yitzira, says the guy. And that's what he's Borei Refuas. Right? We're constantly being Borei Refuas. It's not just refining a little more. So like new concepts of refuah, mamish, new concepts of refuah. So even though it's all made out of the stuff that has been here since Sheshes made gracious, we're going to talk more about this, right? But it's like new concepts. Dvarim nifloim, and I was the beneficiary of this just so recently. I have to give Shech Vodah Hashem Yisbarach. That with the failures that there are on the external level, and we're going to talk about this, but on the internal level, there's movement for Tikun. Problem is, how do we harness? How do we realign the chitzonius and the pnimius, and which is also a big Torah from the Ramchal in the Adir Bamorim. Right? Matter of fact, I'll speak it out now, and and Ramchal should be Melitz Yosha for us. An amazing thing. Right? This is the Ramchal in the Adir Bamorim. The case in point that he takes, right, is the orbits. We have two different shitas in Tanoim. Where does the sun go when it sets? Guys down Marav yet? Don't forget Sphira. I davened before I started this presentation, and I counted tonight's Sphira, which is by no coincidence Ramchal Yahrtzeit says Yesod should be Yesod. By the way, I don't think there's a single sheet that holds that's a problem of Kilu being Yahrtzeit Sphira because it's not a number. Right, so it's a meat of Yesod should be. So we're going to discuss it, right? But anyway, so the Ramchal is going about the what Chazal is two sheets in Tanoim. The sun sets and then it goes up by the North Pole and resets, or goes into Ovia Rakiach, like settles into another dimension and then shoots over. And we know from scientifically that's not the case. It just goes around the other side of the world. Just goes. And I thought the Gemara was omid on that seemingly the Yevonim had it right and we had it wrong, so to speak. What does that mean? And we have other, and this is just the example that the Ramchal deals with, but he talks about it also in general. When we find sometimes in Chazal that they say facts about the physical universe that don't stim with what the eye can see, with whether it's mamish the eye in the telescope or in the microscope, or what, based on our new knowledge, we calculate that has to be, right? So how do we stim? So Ramchal says an amazing thing, right? There's a little bit of a precursor to this concept of the Maharal in the second verse of the Ramchal. I mean, say in the second verse of the Maharal, right? Because that we live in and it's like this is Ramchal talking like super advanced stuff. Says we live in a world that there's many more than the three dimensions that we see, right? Really, there's more dimensions that we can count. And it's amazing that Ramchal said this way bore science was oimid on this. And now in science, they talk about these things, that there are many more dimensions than what the eye can see. We knew this al pi Kabbalah way way back when. And Ramchal is just being mafarish. But he wasn't machadish the idea of the that there's from our vantage point probably infinite dimensions, more than we can count, to reality, right? It was already in Kabbalah beforehand, but Ramchal was mevared very well. Yes. Torah comes from the inner dimensions of reality, right? And that's why we call Torah Pneumius. It's not just it's not just a saying. It really there's inner dimensions of reality. There's outer dimensions. Why the science only measures the outer dimensions of reality. That's why they're called chachmos chitzonios, external wisdoms. What does that mean? External wisdoms. They measure what things look like, what things seem like, what they feel. The sensible world is the external level, even the sense of touch. You just know what it feels like on the surface, right? Let alone what you see. How our senses are affected, which is how we measure reality. It's just the chitzonius of the bria, and even lahavdil, physics was already omid on this, and even before physics, the empirical philosophers, the empiricists, we're not really measuring the mahus of reality. We're just, we're measuring what reality looks like, what it sounds like, how it affects our instruments. What is the mahus? What is the essence, right? So now we'd like to believe, not like to believe, we know that the mahus of reality is the Torah, the divrei Torah, the istako boraiso bara alma, and that's the side. All the Sforim agreed. It's not lav dafka Ramchal. You can find us in all the Sforim. Right, that's the pshat that Adam Rishon knew the names of the nivroim and the angels when Hashem threw out a challenge. The angel said, "What's so great about this man thing? You're so enamored with this creation, man. Sachagol, flesh, blood, and fat. The Adam." So Ribosh says, "Chachmas u'ruv shelachem." He's wise of you guys, and then it says what it says in Bereshis that Hashem passed the animals from and Kosh Yikradam Ushmo, and Hashem challenged the angels, "What do you call these things?" And they didn't know, and Adam Rishon knew exactly what to call each thing, because Adam Rishon's neshama that comes from the pneumius of the bria was able to tap in and give the name that reflects the mahus in each and everything. So even Malachi Asharis, though they aren't, in touch with the inner mahus of things, which is beside the Torah, that only the nishmas adam that comes from that shorish. Bereshis b'shul atorshnik reishis, b'shul yisoshnik reishis. There aren't two firsts. No, they come from the exact same shorish. Nishmas Yisrael, which was what Adam Rishon was Kodem Achet, is what we will call today Jewish. Nishmas Yisrael comes from the same shorish as Torah, the reishis, right? And so Adam Rishon, before he was chayt Eitz of Das Tovarad, he had real Das Torah. He could see this thing, this nivra. Its mahus is sure. That's shin vav reish. Those are those oisius, which are connected those urusal yorim that make it what it is in essence. That's why an ox should be called a shore, right? And the angels don't go there, right? So it says the Ramchal like this, you can understand that if you look at something from different angles, they look very different, right? Something could look very different from the inside than from the outside, right? Especially if the outside is one big, illusion, because the outside is just how it affects our senses. Because even though who knows if even the outer layer of reality really is that, it's just how our senses are impacted. The stimulus that we get, stimuli, I should say, that we get from the outer layer, that's all we're measuring. Really measuring how our eyes are affected, our ears are affected. Right? So even the outer layer, we don't get to the mahus, let alone the inner mahus. So he says an amazing thing, says the Ramchal, right? For us, right? Chazal, that, how did they come to their conclusions of how the orbits work? They were darshaning psukim. Right? They weren't using telescopes. They weren't using microscopes. They were looking at the Divrei Torah, and in Pnimius, the Bria really works that way. Where the way the Bria looks in Pnimius is not the way it looks from Chitzonius, right? And sadly, there is a fragmentation. That loss of level will be healed up. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. There is a fragmentation between the Chitzonius and the Bria and the Pnimius and the Bria, right? And this is what we're going to talk about tonight, big time, right? Because this is what's going on, right? The fragmentation, though, there's, is not just between separate entities, that they're not together, like the sheep and the wolves are fighting. There's even within something itself, its Pnimius and its Chitzonius could be in a real disconnect, even with one thing itself, right? So, like what's going on in the world, the Ramchal writes, and I just noticed, Mamish, this past Erev Shabbos in Ramchal Chabur that I give, that's what it's in Pnimius, the world's only moving towards Tikun, even though in Chitzonius it looks like it's working straight towards total ruin, right? As we're going to discuss. And that's part of what's wrong with the world. There's fragmentation, and the fragmentation can even be within one entity itself. Hey, you need a raya? Guf and neshama. Right? The neshama is the premise of the guf. It gives it its life. It gives it everything that the guf does. Mikoch the neshama. And are there two entities that are seemingly the same person? They're just in totally different directions. The neshama wants ruchnius, and the neshama wants what's good, and the guf is just running after its taivas. So you need a bigger raya than that, right? Guf and neshama, one person, right? And the person is not complete until he's guf and neshama together. Yeah, person is not complete until he's body and soul. That's the whole zeh kol adam, right? And for reasons that the Ramchal says, because man is not a microcosm of all that exists unless it's body and soul together. The body is a microcosm of everything that was created with the meat of Hester upon it. And the neshama is a microcosm of everything created Baharas upon it. And so the two together make a Tzelem Elokim. Tzelem Elokim is the two together, the complete Tzelem. Right? Right? And look, the body and soul are at battle with each other. And even though one can't live without the other. And the neshama can't do its mission without the guf, because the neshama can't do mitzvahs, right? And the guf is nothing without the neshama. It's like a, piece of, it's like a dead stone, right? So you see this reality that there's, pnimius and chitzonius, even though they're all parts of the same thing. They could be in total fragmentation, right? Total fragmentation. There's a Medrash Shochartov that says that by the neshama it could be once every hour. The neshama says, "I've had it with this jerk. I'm leaving." The neshama can't take the guf anymore because the person's living like a Russia, and the neshama, which gives him life, can't control him. Right? And the neshama says, "I'm leaving," and Rebbe Hashem has to step in and show Malo Kolar's Kvodo, and then remind the neshama of its mission to keep the neshama willing to hang around. Okay? So if that way in the individual, it's that way also in the cosmos. So the Chazal, we're talking about the pnimius of the Bria. And when Chazal or even Maida, the Yevonim have it right, they were talking about the Chitzonius of the Bria. We thought that the way it is on pnimius is the way it is in Chitzonius. Right? No, the Yevonim were big Bekim and Chachmas Chitzonius, right? They're right about the Chitzonius. Doesn't mean Chazal were wrong about the pnimius. Right? It's a Davar Nifla. Right? It's interesting that the Maharal already was thinking along these lines in the second Akdama, the Geburas Ayin Sham. Right? So going back to my situation, now we're going to talk more about this, right? So we can have a fragmentation that if we're only getting closer to Mashiach, we're only getting closer to Tchias HaMesim, we're only getting closer to Olam Haba, right? And every day, Rebbe Shlomo mashpia a new shefa that causes the movement of time. Like the Ramchal also writes in the Yad B'Amorim, the movement of time is caused by giving the shefa that makes the present is nostalgic, and that's how the present moves to the past. And the new shefa that makes the present comes, and then that's nostalgic. And so Rebbe is constantly giving chadoshim labkorim, new shefa, and that new shefa is advancing the universe, right? And so in Pnimius, we're of course only getting closer. And in previous, you have to say that there's, in a certain way, believe it or not, the world is actually more fixed now than it was, let's say before the Holocaust. We had all these great yeshivas and all these tzaddikim in the Pnimius, not in the Chitzonius, right? Right? And there's this terrible fragmentation, between the Pnimius and the Chitzonius. Even though in the big picture we're closer, and there's been new energies unleashed into the Bria, right? We don't feel them, and we feel like we're going in the opposite direction. Yeah. We live in a fractured reality. Right? Yeah, but I know we could take solace, every once in a while, like in medical advancements, the boire refuus, right, as a siman ledavar, that we're getting closer. Now, it's not like boire refuus, right? Boire refuus, that's constructive. The fact that AI and all these gadgets that people make really for their typhus or their laziness, I don't call that progress, but boire refuus, okay. So I want to get to something else. How my giving shach voda on, my hatzalah, which Hashem should help that it should be, just like He gave it to me. He should finish it legamre, and ala ofen achitov. Yochanan Meir ben Shulamis l'rfuah shleima toch shachal Yisrael. Right, and the Baruch Hashem that He heals me should heal all those who are nitzrach for refuahs. Right, but let's talk about my personal situation, right? Because it sheds light on the issue that I want to address when discussing the legacy of the Ramchal, right? So, there's a famous Chazal, right? I think it was an empress asked, I think it was Rabbi Yossi, one of the Tanoim, was asked by an empress, what's Rebbe Hashem busy with ever since he created the world? What's he doing? It's seemingly it's all on automatic pilot ever since. What's he keeping busy with? So, the Tana answered her as mizavig zivugim. He's making shidduchim. Mizavig zivugim. So he said, I can do that. And she just lined up a whole bunch of slaves and a bunch of maid servants and, bas ploni l'ploni, and no shalom bias, right? So now anyone understands, and it's in the Sfarim that, shidduchim, is an external manifestation, it's but not chitzonis as opposed to previous, but it's just what it's. I mean to say, shidduchim is a mashal, right, for what still needs to be done. The tikun that Hashem left for man, asher bara Elokim la'asois, what the Hashem created. There's still more asiya necessary. The Hashem in 7 days created all the pieces. Our job is to pull the pieces together. I mean, it's what the Rebbe does, but he does it b'shutfus with Am Yisrael, right? We do our mitzvahs, and through our mitzvahs, we actually are pulling the components of creation together, to undo the fragmentation, right? Because even before we made the world a lot worse, and the gullus for sure is pizul, fragmentation, but even before that, the tikun that was left for Adam to do, that of course Rebbe has to assist, because the Adam could do it, but only if the Rebbe enables it. So the Adam does his to get a response from heaven for it to be finalized of being mezaveg zivugim, pulling the pieces together, just like you have to pull a man and his wife together. He has to his better half, as Lashon HaZohar, if you don't have a wife, you're plag gufa, right? You're only a half a person, you only have a body, you're plag gufa, right? Like Gemara in Yavamis, that anyone shoy blow, shoy blow, bracha blow, Torah. You don't even have Torah without a wife. You need everything. Your mom is, an incomplete person, right? Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made your wife, but it's your job to derech ha'ishlach hazach isha. Now, of course, you need Hashem to endorse it, that the zivug should be mekuyim. There should be a binyan adayat. It's our job, and Hashem finishes it, right? It's a shutfus, right? The zavig zivugim, and that's not just, shidduchim is like the prime example, because Adam lived in Eden, which was a perfect world from our perspective, relatively speaking. He still had to get married. Still had to find his Ezer connector. So it was like that was the, as it were, minimal job that needs to be done, but of course this got expanded, and we speak about this in our Sefer Evan Shasia on Sefer Bereshis in Parshas Chayei, that the first Jewish marriage, that's chronicled totally, which is Yitzchak and Rivka, is in the same parasha where we also have the first business deal, And it was so chashuv that B'nai Ches get mentioned so many times because they're mevarer mekchol shel tzaddik. They're to clarify a acquisition of a tzaddik. It's a big deal. It's business. No, the tzaddik, he pulls the piece together by acquiring this field, making it his, incorporating it into his dominion, and buying, selling, moves the pieces around. And Ramchal writes that also. That was the secret that Avram gave Ephron. It's also in the Adir Bamor. Arbamel shekel kesef oiver la seicher, money that goes anywhere, that the money moves around the world, and people get that money and give something for it, and then the money moves, and people get something for the money and give something for it. It causes the money that moves around the world is also causing things to get rearranged because there's going to be acquisitions. And he says that money is the chitzonius of Torah. That's alluded to what the pasuk says in Mishlei Kitov Sachra mi Mischar Kesef. The dealing of Torah, going schor, is even better than how money goes around. That's what schor means. Schor goes around, right? That's over la soicher, right? Our job is to pull the pieces together. And of course, it's rooted ultimately. Well, why is that our Tikun? That is the Tikun of the world, right? Ultimately rooted in what's called Shvira Sakelim, right? That the Rebbe Shalom, shattered, the elements of reality of this world, of the lower world, and we have to pull the pieces together. Now, sadly, we made it a lot worse than it had to be. Right. Sad. Yeah, we have a golden retriever. Right. Sadly, we made it a lot worse than we have to. We increased the fragmentation in the world, as per Chorban Habayis. Disassembled the house. Right. Bias is, and Beis HaMikdash, hear this well. Beis HaMikdash to pull the pieces together. Binyan. And because of our sins, Chorban Habayis. And because of our sins, Pizur, Golus. Right? Everything gets fragmented, everything gets separated. Right? And so we made our job a lot harder than it had to be. Now, take a look at Davar Niflamot that the Ramchal also writes about it. Everything tonight is the Ramchal. Right? The Ramchal writes about this. Look, Adam Rishon only had, 2 mitzvahs, right? Beyond getting married, right? So la'avda u'lashamra, right? Eden was a perfect place. Now just work the field and keep it safe, right? Keep it. Now what does that mean? He didn't have to do physical work like we know it, but it was. But love the zu mitzvah say l'shamra zu mitzvah leisase. Okay. So now why are we stuck with Taryag? He was able to get by with 2 mitzvahs, love the l'shamra. No, I mean, talking in general, in general, it's called love the Shabbat. Of course, we know from the Rambam, beginning of in Hilchos Malachim, Parak Tes Hilchos Malachim, that Adam Rishon actually had 6 mitzvahs, right? With all their bylaws. So, so now we need Taryag. Why do we need Taryag mitzvahs? Adam Rishon got by with 6, which were code form. Love the Shabbat. Assays and love assays. Love the assay. The Shamra, Lois Asay. Right? So says the Ramchal, because we, in a few places, we stunk up the scene. We are now in a world of Hayom Katzar V'Amalacha Meruba. But who did that? We're the ones who sinned and shortened our lives. Adam Rishon could have lived to 1,000 years, right? Was meant to live 1,000 years, and the Malacha Meruba, a lot to clean up. So now we need Taryag mitzvahs. That's what we need to, pull the pieces together. So now, even though we're talking Ramchaldik, but the Nefesh HaChaim just says it so nicely, and he says, the famous lashon of Chazal, Lo nitna mitzvahs el litzarf ben esabrias. The Rebbe doesn't need our mitzvahs. The mitzvahs litzarf ben esabrias, right? To purify, literally litzarf like tziruf, right? Is to purify the brias. That's the literal meaning of the word, litzarf, right? But is that the only, the only meaning? Also means to gather. So it says Nefesh HaChaim, amazing. Mitzvah is lashon, not just a lashon of command, which they are, but also it also means tzavta, connection. With the Taryag mitzvahs, we're mitzaref the brias. We pull the brias together, right? And that's what purifies them also. Because when you put the 2 things that belong together, when they belong together, you put them together, so they merge at the with the good matter that's in them, the toiv that's in them merges and pushes the impurities out. So, because where does Ra exist, says the Ramchal. Everything today is Ramchal, right? Says Ramchal in a few places, right? The Ra exists in gaps. What's sickness? A lack of health, or a chink in your health. What's death? Fragmentation between body and soul, right? What's poverty? Lack of money. Now, by the way, it doesn't mean that there's an absolute vacuum of money. That's not right. My dog is very excited about the Torah of the Ramchal. Chazal tell us that the dogs are very spiritually sensitive creatures. They know when Elionah is in town. They know when the Malchus is in town. Tomorrow you have to take the dog. Tomorrow you have to take the dog. Open the door, give her something to eat, play with her, please. Racham avakol masa. Cham. Good alcohol and the painkillers, unbelievable siruf. Okay, I'm talking about siruf. Sorry for better some breeze. Right? So, like, going back to poverty is like something that's mamish nogeya. Our world, that we have such abundance in the world today because of farming technology. If we don't let the leftists take it away from us, and they don't stop us from fertilizing our fields, right? There's such abundance in the world. There is like never before. Why is there poverty? Because there's fragmentation. But the wealth is there by Yenim, who might be hoarding it, like these billionaires, or China that's buying up all our farmland. They're commercial, right? And so there's fragmentation that the ani who needs it can't get it, right? Listen, Rebosha made a perfect world. This is certainly true nowadays, but it is Ken Zahn that it was always this way. That the cause of poverty was simply, fragmentation. That there's plenty of food somewhere else in the world, just I can't get to it. Right? There's plenty of money, I just can't get it. I don't have access. Right? So it's in these gaps of fragmentation that all the Ra exists. It doesn't have an active existence. It's in all the fragmentation. Right? So now when you pull the pieces together, fragmentation is over and the evil gets pushed out of reality. Right? Right? Pull the pieces together, litzarif, and that in itself is their purification, because if they're adulterated with evil, the evil exists in fragmentation. You pull the pieces together, so there's the crack where the Ra was has been filled in. The Ra is pushed out of reality. Right? That's ultimately how the Ra gets pushed out of reality, because all the Brias joined by the good matter, and then that's the sticky stuff in a good way. The Knesia l'shem shamayim, sofalis kayin, right? So the good matter is the stickiness in a good way that holds it, but it's only some l'shem shamayim. That's what holds things together. And then the Ra is just pushed out of reality. And that's the Soda Tikun in general, that we don't eliminate Ra all in one moment, but by pulling the good matter together and making it central, we push the Ra to the periphery. Ultimately, it falls out of reality itself. It just falls off the edge of reality. There's no place for it anymore. So, and that's really what the Ramchal writes in the Das Tvunos. We talk about Olam HaTohu versus Olam HaTikun, right? The spheres the Tohu versus the spheres the Tikun. The spheres that Tohu of Zeh Tachazeh, right? And there's spheres of Tikun that are beside Kavim, a right side, a left side, and a middle that negotiates between the two. Says the Ramchal, all these deep Kabbalistic ideas could be explained, philosophically as in Tohu, all the entities of creation, each one just wants to be alone, each one wants to be on top. Zeh Tachazeh. The spheres to Tohu, Zeh Tachazeh. Now, each one wants to be on top, each one just wants to be in first place. This Tikun is when there's Kavim, right side, left side, and a balance, that they come to supplementation. Right? You see the big picture, how everything fits. Now, I kind of went on a tangent just to talk about my personal situation, the Zaveg Zivugim, right? A lot of doctors out there, and it's like we're in a frightening situation. right? That that in the chitzonius of the bria, we're moving further and further away into greater and greater, not just fragmentation of resources, but fragmentation of deos, fragmentation of opinions. You have two doctors that could have gone to the same medical school, and one would tell you the solution to all your problems is changing your gender, and if not, you'll surely commit suicide. And you have doctors, that's crazy. It's mutilation and just the opposite. When you wake up one day after you've mutilated your genitals, that's when you'll commit suicide. Not if you hang tight and get back to sanity, right? We remember what happened with COVID. And anyone who said something different than the official narrative got canceled. And so now, was nogea myself, and I just want to talking about being mezaveg zivugim. I was nogea myself, and I want to share with you, and because that's still with the legacy of the Ramchal, is that I owe my life, to a shluch rachbar. Everything's from Hashem, right? And anyone that does good is just simply Hashem's messenger. My Hashem's messenger to me was this medical advocacy group called Chaim Medical Resource. I'm not talking against all the other groups, but you should know that this group is the real deal. And when everyone wasn't sure what was wrong with me, there are people who figured out, you get to the emergency room, and not ancient room, you got to go to Cornell because they're the top in, this particular affliction, needing to patch up, And then after that, and then Cornell wanted, to research the root of the problem that caused the whole emergency. Wanted to pass it. Of course, keep me in-house. They're in-house guy, right? And then Chaim Medical Resource said, but that's not the best guy. And you need someone who moved on to Northwell, and that's the best guy in the world. And they were right. And, they maximized me getting the benefit of Borei Refuos, right? And otherwise I'd be flying blind. Who knows where I would be today? You need the mezaveg zivugim, right, to make the hookups. They get to the right doctor, the right place, right time. Best hospital, best doctor. The mezaveg zivugim, and we are in a serious situation where we are living in a world of fragmentation that is spiraling out of control on the chitzonius. But my friends, it was always meant to be that way. That was going to spiral out of control on the chitzonius of the bria. Because this is what everything Chazal describe about ikvisa de Meshicha, right? Of like the total meltdown of law and order, right? The total meltdown, the total chaos that'll be. Because the law and order is all fake, because it's all, there's special interests that are secretly infiltrating everything, right? And it has to be removed to bring out the true order of Melech HaMashiach. The Maral says, it's a big yisod, the Maral's Netzach Yisrael, not that anyone disagrees, but the Maral's Mevared Hated in the Netzach, right, that the Rebbe Shem has to melt down all semblance of order, and disassemble, fragment all the institutions because they're corrupt, So initially we're going to go through a lot of pain of fragmentation, but so through the absolute fragmentation that gets rid of the fake order, so the real order of Melech HaMashiach can take over. So the pneumius that's building up, like we explained, can finally emerge because there's not a rebellious chitzonius blocking it. But this fragmentation that we're facing right now, you can't, in the medical community, in politics, what's happening in Yahrtzeit, the internal, and this is what hurts more than even what's going on in America, that once upon a time, there's between Democrats and Republicans, there's between vanilla and French vanilla, and now it is mamish. It looks like we're this close to civil war, right? And it is America, right? It's all about e pluribus unum, from many one, that somehow we're all different, and still somehow we get along with being different. That was supposed to be the great American experiment, which we'll talk about. It's what the Ramchal was about. Explain, right? And but it's worse, machlokas by goyim, they're anyway called, rabbin. They're not called goy echad. They're never meant to be bachtos. And more often than not, we Am Yisrael benefit when they're bepirud, because when they're fighting each other, they're not fighting us, right? But we're goy echad ba'aretz, and we're meant to be one, like Kivyachol, like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one. That's Atecha v'Shimcha Echad Mikam Chayz V'Goy Echad Baretz. And you know what's going on in Eretz Yisrael today, right? You know, the internal strife, it's much deadlier to our society than Hamas. I mean, it sounds crazy to say, but it is. You know, the government's this close to toppling, the outright war with the Haredim about military service and funding Haredi institutions. We are in bad shape, right? The fragmentation is horrible. And I've already said years ago that World War III is going to be different than any other world war, categorically different. Other World War, you had nations that were pretty much, united nations within themselves fighting each other. World War III, which is speedily coming, is international civil war. Ish ba'achiv, right? Easy to explain in right versus left politically. It's cutting across the whole globe. Sadly, it's affecting Am Yisrael, Goy Echad Baretz, right? Right? And like I said, it sounds terrible, but we have to understand that the Chitzonius is going to be totally bepured for the Achdus and Pnimius in order to emerge and take over, because there won't be a fake Achdus, to block it. All right, so now, so I want to talk about the legacy of Rabbeinu Ramchal. We've been saying Torah from Ramchal already for the last 40 minutes, according to my clock, 41 minutes like this. I said Sphere already. Like the 41st day of the Omer, right? But the inyan of the mahus of the Torah of the Ramchal, which is not just his style of chidushim, it is a derech halimud, and it's not just a derech halimud. It's a derech in correct thinking, and it is the derech hatikun itself, right? And that is that the Ramchal's special gift, and we will bring examples, right, is that in everything he saw the whole picture, right? He saw he saw how all the different parts, even the parts that are seemingly on the surface oppositional, how everything fits, but everything fits in its correct place. And he understood, he could see the shirish, the root, and then what principles are derivative. Right? He knew not just, there's a lot of true information, but not all true information is equal. The true information has to be taken in context, A. B, there's some more elemental truths and there's some more secondary truths built off those elemental truths. And the elemental truths are probably true all the time. They're elemental, they're Yahrtzeit. And some truths are only true, part of the time, and then you have to take, and again, this goes back to the importance of context, right? Especially if they are sometimes emergency measures or exceptions. Excuse me, please. Tamar? Okay. Anyway, so Ramchal's genius, and he outlines his derech halimud. The best place to see how he describes what he was all about is in his Hakdama to Derech Hashem, where he says that there's a lot of information. Dog is my dog. Dogs are very spiritual creatures. The Gemara says that they could sense when the Malcham is in town. They could sense when the Navi's in the town. Very, very special creatures. I always thought it was like some dog lover's Torah, but it's in the Vilna Gaon. It's in the Gaon. Kelev, Kilev. They're like your heart. They reflect your mood. They're very loyal. It's a Gaon. So even though you find elsewhere where they're called Hani Kabid Chatzifin, right? There's because in everything in God's world, there's the good and there's its, as it were, evil counterpart. Right? The golden retrievers are good. Anyways, going back to the point that we're getting to, the Ramchal best illustrates his derech halimud in everything. He alludes to it in Zalazor, but he wrote a whole akdama to explain his way of learning and his derech, in everything, right? That there's a lot of true information, and sometimes you're overwhelmed by the truth, and that's another story. The Ramchal is talking more than almost 300 years ago, almost mamish, right? Tonight is his 278th Yahrtzeit, right? So So he's talking about how, like, what is it, 290, like 300, almost 300 years ago, right? He's talked about how being swamped by information, and you get confused because it's all true information. You can't, just ignore it, right? And you get swamped, and you lose focus. And this, he said it in his day, right, nearly 300 years ago, right? Say v'chashov, what it's like today. We live in the information age, and we know that this is true. We're swamped with information. We're distracted by it. We can't concentrate because we're being bombarded with information. So Ramchal says you have to learn in this body of information to make order. What are the fundamentals? What are the derivatives? And where does it belong? And he says it's amazing, not just a matter of keeping control. Because he advises, indeed, if you could zero in on the Yahrtzeit and the Klolim, as he calls it, you could actually temporarily ignore the Pratim, because if you get the Klolim straight, you have a framework that when you encounter the Pratim, it'll be filed accordingly in their proper place. And it's not just a filing method. He says, what is meaning? He says an amazing word over there that doesn't get explained well enough when people teach Dagdama to Derech Hashem. So what is the concept of something having meaning? What does it mean to be meaningful? Says the Ramchal, the difference that it makes. That's how it's meaningful. The difference that it makes. If something doesn't make a difference, like the Gemara says, l'may nafkamina. Well, what? It sounded very intelligent. It sounded like some good philosophy or some legalese. And when the Gemara says, like, the Gemara says, l'may nafkamina. Right? If it doesn't make a difference, it's not meaningful. Something is meaningful if it makes a difference. How do you know something makes a difference? You have to have a concept of the whole and see what it changes. You have to know where is its place in reality. And this is the difference that it makes, and it makes a difference there. Not there, but there. There it makes a difference. Right? You have to have a concept of the whole. You have to have a skeletal picture of the whole. And then see, and this detail fits here, and this detail fits here. And that avoids confusion. A lot of times we say we have a stira, you have a contradiction. No, but we say, what does the Gemara say? Bamed dvarim amurim. We give context and say, no. This was only said here. It was said over there. Therefore, they don't contradict because they don't operate at the exact same time under the same set of circumstances. This is true at this time under this set of circumstances, and this is true under this time at this set of circumstances. But you got to have a picture of the whole to get that context that automatically resolves a lot of contradictions. Right? So the Ramchal's genius was to, in any body of knowledge that he tackled, and we discussed this, and it's very cool because he did it in concentric circles, as we'll explain, right? Is that immediately to zero in on what are the Yahrtzeit, what are the Klolim, and what are the Pratim, and out of the Yahrtzeit also to make a tree. These are like very, very fundamental ideas, very elemental. These are less so, and then you construct like a skeleton. And then these details fit with this principle. These details fit with that principle. You make order. And he says sometimes you just have to ignore the details to get the principle straight, and then go back for the details. Right? Something that we really don't do in this day and age. We just rush in more details, and we lose control of the issue, and we lose the meaning of things. Because we're overwhelmed, because the meaning of things is how something affects something else, right? The checks and balances is really the meaning of something, how it moves things around, how it affects, and we're just overwhelmed. We lose the sense. He calls it it's the difference between just being a forest, just trees everywhere. Is that how you want your knowledge, right? Or do you want it like a garden? The roses are here, and the tulips are there, and look at how the contrast, how they complement each other, yet they're different from each other. And with that approach, also, it's not hard if you set your head to that idea of let me zoom in on the principles, right? It's not hard to keep control, right? The Ramchal was not appreciated in his time. No, sadly not. Ramchal was not properly appreciated. He was underappreciated. Not only that, they chased him across Europe. On my website, evanshisia.com, you just do a search engine, in the search engine, Ramchal. I have so much on the Ramchal's life and times. Tonight, every night, every Yahrtzeit is different. And tonight I just want to say it in the way I'm saying it. but I have a lot about his life and times, on my website. So I just put it on the board over here. Evan Shasia.com. Go to my site and just Ramchal a lot on his history, just his biography. But then I'm just talking about his intellectual legacy and how it's derech hatikun. Right, it's derech hatikun. Now we're going to get into what he has in common with the Rambam. Right, but so Ramchal was able in everything that he touched. This is like his hallmark, like zero in, and he looked for structure. He looked for structure, but not just a technical structure, but a meaningful structure of the principles and how the principles are arranged relative to each other, and then the details and which details fit with what. No? Mesilas Yesharim, everyone's heard of that. Now he writes, so I said Derech Hashem, he really speaks out where his head is at, right? But in Mesilas Yesharim he writes, he was looking for a framework. What to be a righteous person, a saintly person. I want a framework for that. That just sounds too vague, right? So he found the Brisa of Pinchas ben Yair. Torah maybe there's zeros, maybe there's rizos, and he built it off that. He felt that Brisa of Pinchas ben Yair said the structure of being a chassid, and that's indeed how he does it. He sets it up and he shows how one leads to the other. That's on the elemental level, but then within, yes, like on the average, generally 3 chapters on each attribute. What it is, explaining it, and that's what Ramchal is. He explains what is the principle, what is it. And then how do you acquire it, right? It's the details. And also the anti-details, what would cause you to lose it, right? It's all Masudar, the principle, what it is. The details involved in getting it or actualizing it, fulfilling it, and the anti-details, that these things, stay away from these if you want to get here. Right? So, the Derech Hashem, he says that's the Bahus of the whole book. But that's in everything that he touched, right? And we're going to discuss this in a second, but I want to jump ahead how for Chochmas HaKabbalah, which in general, for those who are Kabbalistically inclined, and everyone should be, and that's also speaking about how we're only getting closer is the secret of why Kabbalah was more revealed in later generations than earlier generations, goes back to the Yesod of the Ramchal, that, the world in a certain way, for those who are worthy, is more pure, and more of Torah has been revealed, including Chochmas HaKabbalah, than earlier generations. Right? Of course, you have to be able to penetrate to the Pnimius. You have to be righteous, and you have to, it's there, it's accessible. But of course, you have to be worthy of accessing. Okay, but it's there. More of Torah has been revealed, not less. Ribosh has been constantly revealing Torah more and more and more and more ever since Matan Torah. So, of course, more of Torah is currently revealed than in earlier generations. Every single day. That's why we make a bracha. Noisei na Torah. God is still giving Torah. Right? There's new revelations constantly being pumped into the world, like we said, like every new energies every day. Right? So Kabbalah, in particular, is Soda Tikun. Right? So now in Kabbalah, the Ramchal's contribution was just monumental. Right, so this in general, what he does to any field of knowledge is enough of a chiddush. But in Kabbalah, let's say it like this, and then we're getting into the relationship between the Ramchal and the Rambam. Right, what the Rambam did for the Gemara is what Ramchal did for Kabbalah. Let's say it like that, and that explains the great affinity that the Ramchal has for the Rambam. And it says, and it's indeed, his infinity around not just how the Rambam paskin, but how the Rambam saw the structure of Torah. Rearranged it, the whole information of the Shas in his 14 books of the Yad Chazaka, and how he did it in a very scientific order. It's nifla mode. And as the Maggid Mishnah writes in his opening to his Pirush on the Mishnah Torah, which I think he only picks up from Sefer Zmanim, if I remember correctly, the number one thing to be medayek from Rambam is where he put what idea. Because he put all the Shas, he rearranged all the information of Shas in a very systematic order. Because the Shas, does things in derech pilpul. And sometimes, sugyas bleed into sugyas because they want to bring a riot from there. And so it's a very interesting challenge that when you're learning the ikar sugya of a halacha, it seems that the Gemara left something unresolved. The Gemara actually resolved it when discussing another sugya elsewhere in Shas, because it, Derech Agav, the pilpul led it in that direction. So what the galus of what the Rambam did, how he took the Siyah, the Yama Talmud. It's not called the Yam for nothing. Right? It's like a Yama Talmud that's expanding. Arukam, Ruchava Mini Yam, right? And Rambam got control over it and organized all that information in a very systematic way. And that's what the Rambam was always doing. Rambam was a man of systems. Yud Gimel Ikra, which yours truly wrote a monumental book on the topic. Or I'll be the Torah of my Rebbe, Rav Yaakov Weinberg, who was a Rambam man, heart and soul, right? The 14 shoroshim of what qualifies to count as a mitzvah. And Rambam also was looking for that. What are the actual Torah mitzvahs and what are the halachas that are just, the rest are just halachas from those Torah mitzvahs, right? The Rambam was a man of systems, and which is an interesting affinity. That's what I was alluding to at the beginning of tonight's presentation. Mi Moshe vad Moshe, lo kam kamoshe. That means from Rav Moshe ben Maimon to Rav Moshe Chaim ben Yaakov Chai Luzado, Schuso Yagen Aleinu Chaim. Lo kam kamoshe. No one made so much order out of Torah, Seder, out of Torah, like the Ramchal did. But the Ramchal, he did it in Chochmas HaKabbalah. Because the Zohar and the Ari, in particular, right? Zohar, all Zohar, anyone actually learned Zohar, right? And the Ari, it's all like derech pilpul, right? And so sometimes, let alone the Zohar, Sefer Yetzirah's Mishnah, right? But the Zohar is like derech pilpul. You have Shimon Asai and Rabbi Lazar answers, and it's a shakla v'tarya. There's a lot of Yisaitis that it's like Gemara that so the idea is posited. Was the idea just posited as a havamina, or and it was said as just a deflection, or is it an absolute teretz? And when does it apply? It's hard to keep track of what it's all said in course of dialectic, in course of argumentation. The Ari is built the same way, right? The Ari gave over his Torah b'derech pilpul. Now Rav Chaim Vital did his best to try to systemize it, but even then he didn't want to say it differently than the way he heard it from the Ari. So he takes these drushes and just tries to arrange them in the best scientific order, but they're drushes, and sometimes something derech agav is said and would seem to contradict it, but then you get the picture of the whole. You understand when where this principle that was said in course of the pilpul, where it really applies, and the Ramchal did that. Now he has a few svarim that just do that. Two prime examples. One just in the lashon of the Ari, and the other one just arranging Torah of the Ari in the Ari's own lashonis. Ramchal's general derech mimics the Yad HaChazaka, right? And the Rambam's way of thinking of looking for the fundamentals. So the Asara Pirkei Elon is to rearrange the Torah of the Ari in the proper order, that some things that were said in a pilpul, in a drush, where it really belongs in the totem pole of reality. That's the Asara Pirkei Elon as a prime example. There are other svarim of the Ramchal like that. He wrote a lot of, sometimes he wasn't happy and he wrote another version, or his Talmidim wrote a version based on his lecture. So we have like a lot of parallel chiburim. So the Asar Pirkei Elon, or the Pischei Chachma V'das, maybe like two others, they're like parallel chiburim, literally connections, right? Pulling it all together, right? And that's all in the shortness of the Ari. And then there's also, the Ramchal had another genius that, something aside from his organizational, the way he made Seder. Right, and we spoke about this in other forums, that Ramchal's Megal the Nimshal says everything that the Ari said was just a mushal, right? And which is the mainstream approach in most Mekubalim. Right, there are some hardliners in certain schools of thought of Sephardi schools and certain Hasidic schools that say you have to take the Ari literally, but not, of course, not physically literally, because that would be idolatry, because even though in Kabbalah, it's a very, very important point that let me make, right? That everyone agrees on. Anyone who knows Kabbalah understands this. That Kabbalah never talks about God himself. We talk about how God runs the world. But even though we're only talking about the way God runs the world, not God himself, still, if you take those terms literally, you're making God's energies and his hanhaga physical, and it's not, right? And now that also causes a lot of confusion. So, of course, the literalists, even they say, just work with the term itself, but think abstractly about the term. And and that's a school of thought that still endures, mainly in Avram Abulafia. I don't know enough about his philosophy. It's a whole different headspace altogether. I was advised by my Rebbeim not to engage with Avram Abulafia. So he's a tzaddik, even though the Rajba did not like him, and the Rajba chased him across Europe. I once told my Rebbe Moshe Shapiro I got this from Avram Abulafia, and he really it's not a big find. Right? There are less dubious sources that you could go to. So I can't. I don't know enough about it. The little bit that I've engaged in seems a lot of meditation and looking for codes. But I readily admit I'm not a big expert, right? But the Ramchal was totally about translating the terms of the Ari into philosophical terms. The only one that came before the Ramchal in this, it's another parallel between the Ramchal and the Maharal. Before we said about the idea of many dimensions. Another parallel between them is that's the end of the Maharal, the precursor, the best precursor to the Ramchal, as far as the Indian of putting Kabbalah into Mr. Blush and Nigla, as I think they say the name for Footner. That's how he qualified it. Mr. Blush and Nigla, the one that that did it, the best before the Ramchal. The Ramchal just took it to another level, and also the Ramchal did with the Torah of the Arizal. The Maharal wasn't zocha to that. Maharal was working with the classical pre-Ari Kabbalah, right? But the one that but putting Mr. Blush and Nigla, the Ramchal was just off the scale on that, And after that, the Talmidei Agoin really ran with that. Talmidei Agoin really from that school of thought, even though the Leshem, who considers himself Hamshach Agoin, did not had a kind of love-hate relationship with it. Something which I write about, by the way, in a special, it was a supplementary essay that I did for Ari Bergman. He put out in honor of his son Shmuli's wedding, some work of the Ramah on the Mar Nevuchim, and the Ramah tried to do this also on his own, but using, actually, interesting enough, the terms of the Mar Nevuchim to explain Kabbalah. But the Maharal just, who didn't like what the Ramah did, interestingly enough, but the Maharal did a much, everyone, we acknowledge, whatever, did an excellent job on the classical Kabbalah, and the Ramchal did it on a whole different level as far as philosophical sophistication, because the Maharal speaks very generally. Anyone's Ragil Maharal speaks very generally. It's very hard to know exactly what he means. You get the gist. Whereas the Ramchal speaks very exactingly, in very exacting, logical terms, and so it's not, loose, not cloudy. It's not in a general direction. Right, but also he did it for the Torah of the Ari, and then so that of course the best book on that is the Das Tfunas. Like you could read the whole sefer and you think you're learning a great philosophy book, and it's all built on the Torah of the Ari. But where he does it, where he makes it a lot clearer that he's really coming to explain the Ari and putting the Ari in the real Seder is his Klach Pischei Chachma. And so again, it's the Klolim, 138 entries, and the rest are just details. But that's how to put it in the lashon of Nigla, as opposed to the Asar Prakim that we mentioned before. That's all the lashonos of the Ari himself. Just he rearranged it, like what the Rambam did for Gemara, is what the Ramchal did for the Torah of the Arizal, and the Zohar in general. It was also written the Derech Pilpul, right? And then the Ramchal, it's clear he was inspired by the Rambam, motivated by the Rambam. And his Sefer Derech Chochma, which is on the proper Seder of how to learn. It's amazing what he wrote in his short life. And he wrote books on every single discipline. In his Sefer Derech Chochma, he writes about that even if you learn all Shas with Meforshim, and even though the halacha is like the Shulchan Aruch and not like the Rambam, you should still learn all Rambam. He says that you should still learn all Rambam. Just check with the Shulchan Aruch that the halacha is really that way. Why? Just learn straight Shulchan Aruch? No, because he felt that the Rambam did the best job of being Mesader, the Torah. Yeah? So it's an amazing affair. That's why it's interesting that the Ramchal has a nickname for the Rambam. He calls it HaMiyuchad Sheb'Mechaber, the one special one of the composers, pulling the pieces together. Right? And that's what I want to talk about tonight, that the Ramchal pulled the pieces together in every wisdom that he touched. But now here's the thing. There are systems within systems within systems. Like, so someone, once told me he got the impression Ramchal doesn't value lumdus, analytical Gemara. Why? Because something that he writes in Masos Yishar, about, that the, Pulim Shalom is Chayavnu Ben, people engage in these mental acrobatics, but also this book, Derech Holland, just alluded to that, he says, listen, you should really, you have to learn Gan Shas with Meforshim, and you have to know it well. Don't get me started, okay? You got to know it well, and not with these cheap translations, and know it analytically. But the Ikar is learning Kabbalah. That's why I got the impression as if the Ramchal didn't value Gemara learning, God forbid. But then the Ramchal has a whole sefer, Derech Tvunas, on the proper way to learn Gemara, and he breaks down the system of Shakvatai. He sees it at the system. It's not just a random kasha, teretz, a proof, but no, there's a system, types of kashas, types of terutzim, types of proofs, types of diyukim. And now that he gives you at the end, I think it's 12 or 24. I'm sorry, saying this off the cuff, like 24 different questions you should ask yourself when going through a sugya, of getting the context straight. Amazing. Of course, he valued learning Gemara. But just say there's of course, this is the proper system of Gemara. But then there's the system of Gemara, and there's the macro system, right? Of what makes you attain dveikus, that the Gemara has its own internal system that he takes very seriously, and he does the best job of explaining. And people should be learning that book. People should be learning Gemara al pi that book, really, right? And so it's the whole internal system of Gemara. The whole internal system, right? And so now logic, we said at the end of the book, he ends off with I think it's 12, I think it's 24 form questions you should ask yourself, but it is explaining the significance of those form questions of context, place, time, et cetera, material, form. So what are these things? So he has another book, Sefer Yigoyim, the whole system of logic, which is really a pirush, going into a deeper analysis and adding details to the form questions that he says everyone should ask themselves when they learn a sugya. So it's like sisters of Gemara. A subsection is the system of logic. That's part of one of the elements. So he has a book also on that whole internally, the system of logic. And his books are all amazingly brief because he's going for the essential system. The rest is just details you can figure out yourself, and I won't confuse you with it now. That is the way to learn. Right, so you have you have the big picture of what part of Torah actualizes dveikus, Kabbalah. Nothing makes you directly connected to God, and the Rambam writes that also. First 4 prakim. You want to come to Ava and Yira, you got to learn the secrets of creation. You got to learn sight. Not to be mezalzel on the rest. He says that. He's not saying anything different than the Rambam, right? So there's the big picture, it's Kabbalah. In the smaller picture, but there's Gemara is important, and here's the system of Gemara. So you have systems within systems, concentric circles. In his philosophy also, so a lot of people misunderstand things, steers in Ramchal, or they don't properly understand Ramchal, right? When the Ramchal says, Ribono Shel Olam created the world to be native, right? That leaves a lot of questions unresolved, like why does God need it? And it makes it clear there's a system within that explains most of life events. But then there's a question: why does he want to be native? That's a mystery. That ultimately is Ramchal writes in the Klach. That's a mystery. But there's something in between. It's called Gilui Yichud. Because why does he want to be native in this way? We have these Tarek mitzvahs, and the way native, you got to work for it. So you got to struggle against evil. Why make me struggle without there being evil in the world? Why do they have to be evil? Well, there's another system called Gilui Yichud. So being native and earning it is one system, surrounded by another more encompassing system called the revelation of God's oneness. And ultimately beyond that, it's a mystery. I'm oversimplifying, right? So the amazing thing that systems within systems that you'd think, okay, he like he denigrated the details. No, he took the details very seriously, because certain details are details relative to the big picture, but that detail is a whole system in its own right. Right? So you got systems within systems within systems, and he had like created a model of like the ultimate all-encompassing system, the system within that system, the system that's branches off to the right, the system that branches off to the left. Niflamah, right? And this is Tikun. Tikun is to pull the pieces together, right? And it's the antithesis of what's going on in the world, right? Right? And we're flooded with information. Everyone just hears one true idea. It's like Democrats or Republicans, as an example, are just screaming at each other. Be sensitive to the mother, and she doesn't want to be bogged down, cursed with a baby, chas v'shalom. But there's something true to the fact that the mother is concerned. But forget that. Let's forget about the stupid claim. Sorry about that. I hope I didn't offend anybody, right? But Am Yisrael, like right now, what went on today in Yahrtzeit, like we are on the cusp of civil war. People talking about that. The yeshiva bachrim have to go to the army, and the yeshiva shouldn't be supportive. They're not sending a certain minimum amount of guys to the army. Now you can't be insensitive, and that to a secular Jew that goes to the army and dies, and just ignore that their very understandable complaint and sense of unfairness. On the other hand, we can't we have to understand that if we close if the yeshivas close down, we're not going to have Gedolei Yisrael, or we're not even have so many from Jews where they go through these and you got to give context to both sides, because and here's the problem: a half truth is 100% falsehood, right? Truth, like the Medrash says in the Parshas Devarim, emes, aleph mem tav, beginning, middle, end, right side, middle, left. That's what makes emes. You need the whole picture, and that's derech hatikun. The problem of why sadly so many Jews fall for leftism, and even from Jews, people that are Shomer Shabbos and yeshiva educated, say, well, they're corrupt. They are. Their thinking is not 100% straight, but you can understand why, because there's certain true ideas that they know these ideas are true, like being kind and being sensitive, as an example, right? And they just don't know how to process it because it's not connected to the whole. You're not being really kind to a person who's confused about their gender by allowing them to go through with it. You're actually being cruel. But you need larger context to understand that the sensitivity has to be processed in a manner that, the real help is to help them overcome the hang-up. That would be real help and real sensitivity. You need to be, you need that kindness, which is a legitimate value, connected to the whole. Right? And that's what the ill that's afflicting us right now. Also with the page turning, the Daf Yomi has gotten out of control, and these joke books that make it easy to flip the pages, right, has really totally taken the Talmud out of the Gemara, right? It's horrible, right? Because people just want to make siyumin, and so you just go through a way through information without making any order out of it, and it just leads to confusion. I meet people that finish Shas, they don't know one single daf well. They don't, right? It's all one big lie, right? It's all one big lie that's done for hype and money. And I'm sorry to say, but we got to catch ourselves before we go off a cliff, right? But but I find that the little bit that they do remember just confuses them more. Right? The added information gives them confusion because they never process it correctly. They say a little bit of danger is a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. And a lot of knowledge could be absolutely lethal if it's not processed correctly, right? You don't have it in context. So it's true, so you got to run with it, and you run with it in the wrong direction, right? So we need the derech of the Ramchal needs someone asked, Amelis asked, was Ramchal ever appreciated? Ramchal was never 100% appreciated. Certain books of his had their moments, like the Muslim movement loved Mesiras Yesharim. right? And cyclically, people like Derech Hashem, but they generally do it for buzzword. They're not really appreciating the godless. They're not understanding. You have to read the whole book, and you have to be. And he says you have to be medayik on every word and be medayik on the order. And they don't learn it that way, and so often they don't even finish the book, which leaves a lot of context missing. Yeah, so these books get buzz, but not the whole integrated derech, right? So people like Das Torah as a way of just getting their feet wet in Kabbalah or Klach. Although I found, sadly, most people touch Klach and Adi Bamon before they're ready for it. He wrote his books in a certain order. You should go from Derech Hashem to Das Torah, from Das Torah to the Klolim that he appended, and then Klach, and then, the Ramchal's whole headspace of Tikun, of integration, needs to we need it badly. It is the antidote. It is Derech HaTikun itself, like we said, like nearly an hour ago. It is Derech HaTikun itself, right? But it's most definitely the antidote to our very fragmented times. We live in a very fragmented headspace, and because the headspace is fragmented, perception is reality, that only increases the cosmic fragmentation that there is in the world. If there are no questions, I will now go and bring this full circle to what we opened up with. Although we said a lot of Ramchal tonight, I opened up saying that I had a real close call, and I'm still healing. Hashem should help, but it's Chasdei Hashem. Borei Rafus. I've been if everything stays the same, it's behind me, and I just need to just heal more, right? But it demands rest, but also having the Ramchal does not speak openly about certain books being off, but he does make mention of it in Maseres Yesharim in general. That person has to be righteous, to be commensurate, to be on the par, to engage in the secrets of Torah. There has to be a certain saintliness of character. He writes about the concept. He doesn't say, but don't learn this book of mine, unless you're there. But he mentions the concept. Right? All right. Tamar. What's that? Someone, please. Should be, please. I'll be done. 1 minute. 1 minute, exactly 1 minute. Let's go. You'll have to forgive me, but this illustrates the problem that I need a break, and that's why I'm broadcasting from home and not from a base medrash or an office. And I've decided during the time I was languishing in the hospital, not sure what's going to be. Chasdei Hashem came out of it. I decided to take a year off, possibly longer, but minimally a year, just to go learning Yomam V'Laila. Now, what I'm going to do during that time also is to compile material, in the spirit of the Ramchal and the Rambam, compile very fundamental educational material, that puts Torah in this framework that the Ramchal tried to impart to us. And I'm looking for support. I'm taking a sabbatical year. It may be extended if there's support to move further, or if it's necessary, or both. And I'm taking a sabbatical year to learn day and night, but basically go through Kol Torah Kula in the Derech of the Ramchal and formulate material, that will give a handle on Torah, because it's a very neglected. Our educational system, like life in general, is just a lot of information and severely lacking in structure. So I'm appealing to you all right now to first of all give tzedakah today, Lilu Nishmas to Ramchal, and he will bless you. It will be Melitz Yoshvu. You're giving tzedakah Li'ilui Nishmas Rabbeinu Moshe Chaim Ben Yaakov Chai Lutzaro. I'll put out, let me write this out for you all in a second and post it. Ilui Nishmas Rabbeinu Moshe Chaim Ben Yaakov Chai was his father's name. Lutzada was his last name. Right. So now, please, give tzedakah Lili Nishmas Rabbeinu Moshe Chaim Ben Yaakov Chai, and it will be military. But please direct this tzedakah to me as I'm collecting for my sabbatical year. I'm actually looking for people that will give something monthly, unless you want to give what you want to give for the whole year in one shot. I'm asking for a minimal donation of $88 a month, minimally. To participate in doing Yisachar Zvulun with me. That means you're partners in my Olam Haba. Not. People ask me, under what type of Yisachar Zvulun are you doing? As I'm doing it in the derech of the Haflah. The Haflah in its introduction to the Miknah, not the Miknah, I meant the Haflah per se. He says that you don't have to make a partnership that the Zvulun, the supporter, takes literally half the Olam above the Yisachar. The Rebbe's got enough Olam above for everybody. The Zvulun, because he enables the Yisachar to generate so much Olam above, Hashem grants the Zvulun also that same type of Olam haba, because he facilitated the Yisachar being able to do it. So it's not that I'm giving away my Olam haba. You'll have your own Olam haba commensurate with the Olam haba you helped me create. So I'm asking people to please donate. I need this sabbatical year, and Be'ez Hashem, I will be very productive for Klal Yisrael during this sabbatical year. And we haven't set up the scheduled payments page. I'm asking everyone to please stay engaged. If you enjoy my Torah, first of all, you'll know where to find me. Even if I'm not going to be in the public square, anyone who wants to hear my Torah will find me, and wants to get me a question will be able to get a question to me. Right? But I want to, by and large, just be engaged in my own learning, not running around after scholar in residence gigs that people know I do that, or be engaged in any projects for other people. I want to be engaged solely in my own learning and my own Chidushei Torah that I want to produce in the spirit of the Ramchal to benefit the generation. So I'm asking you to please go to my website. I said I posted before, evanshasiya.com. So evanshasiya.com. Donate. And please make a donation. Lili Nishmas to Ramchal this day, and he will bless you. And he will give me siyata d'shmaya, and on the website evanshasiya.com, if you want to, first of all, if you ever want to ask me a question, ask the rabbi, contact us, and also if you have any questions of how to set up a subscription payment, please reach out to us. The Schus Rabbeinu Ramchal Yagen V'Adeinu should be Melitz Tov for us. We're in troubling times, but his derech is derech Tikun itself, and is the antidote for the generation. And please help me during my sabbatical year formulate a lot of his principles for Klal Yisrael to, lack of word, forgive me if it sounds overly dramatic, to save Klal Yisrael. We should make it through these ikvus of the Mashiach with the koach of his Torah and see the Gula Shlema B'Meher B'Yameinu L'chaim, L'chaim, L'chaim.